So this is what we're making. It's a ring that is made so that it could be either a ring or a pendant depending on how you bend it. For this little project I'm using a threepence sterling money, which is (16 millimeters in diameter, and I'm using 2mm wire. Now what I'm going to do is make this so that it's either a ring or a pendant using the same amount of wire in the same shape. So the first thing we're going to do is form this into the wire so that it fits in a U shape around the end of our coin. Yeah. So we just want to form this the same diameter as this, but only 180 degrees. So I've measured the coin, I've got my caliper set. I'll put that on my ring stick, mark it slightly smaller with my texture so that I can just form the wire around this. Then I'll check for fit. This is half hard, so I'm just going to push it initially with my fingers and then use the rawhide hammer, not hitting that. You can probably hear that it's raining on my tin roof. I quite like the sound. So check this. You can see it's slightly big, so I'll go smaller on my ring mandrel, hammer it a little bit more. You could form it initially with your flat half-round pliers and then hammer it. Just do whatever you need to do to get your shape. Yeah. And I don't quite have 180 degrees, so I'm going to form it with my pliers. Now I'll hammer it until it's the correct size to fit the coin, because we're going to solder the coin at that spot. So hammer, fit, hammer, fit. What you want is a really good fit on this, because we're going to solder. We're going to solder. So just keep working until it's as perfect as you can get. Now this is a fairly reasonable fit. Now what I'm going to do is take my ring file, and where the coin touches, I'm just going to file a small flat, and it's so that it will solder easier. So make sure that it's still touching all the way around, and at this point I want to file a taper on the outside, because where the coin is, I want that to taper into the coin. So we're just going to have this looks like it's being supported by the wire, but we don't want this big ugly flat end on there. So a fairly long taper, and tidy it up with your sanding stick before you solder, because we don't want to file or sand on the end of our coin. So I'm just hooking that over the end of my bench peg. Put the smooth edge of your file next to your wire, because you don't want to damage your wire, you don't want to mark it. So just file a long taper until it disappears at the end. You can leave a little bit of a bump, but not much. .400 grade paper on your sanding stick. This is another one of those that once you solder it, all you should have to do is polish it. You shouldn't have to do any filing, sanding, anything else. So now I started with about 175 mil long piece. I started with longer than I need because this is the first time I'm doing this, and I always want to have more. So when you're doing a prototype, you tend to be pretty generous because you don't have a clue where you're going to end up. This is the only part that I knew for sure. So at this point, we'll put the ring, or we'll put the coin in, position it where we want it for a pendant, which will be this way. And since King George is on it, what I'll do is I'll put him so that his face is up. Yeah. So we'll solder this from the back. So now I'm ready to put it face down on my charcoal block. I've got him positioned so when I lay it down, I can't see him anymore, but I know that he's in the correct position. I'm using my third hand to hold the wire so that this end is flat. And we'll flex where the coin touches and put a couple of pieces of hard solder about 2 millimeters long right where they touch. Mix up your flux, always. Position your solder using your flux brush. Make sure everything's nice and aligned. I'm going to have to loosen this and redo that. Light your torch. You'll have just gas, LPG, which is nice and yellow. If you have a 2-gas torch, you turn the oxygen on just until the yellow goes out. Which is there. That's a neutral flame. If you have yellow happening, that's a reducing flame. That means that there's more gas than oxygen. And if you have this so that it's really tiny and hot and hissing, that's an oxidizing flame, and that will just burn the metal up. So you always want a neutral flame. If you have LPG air or acetylene air, you always have a neutral flame. You're just adjusting it for size. So now what we're going to do is heat this. So I'm on a charcoal block, and I'm just going to heat this on the outside because this wire is a lot thicker than the coin. And if we get the coin hot, the solder will just run onto the coin and not onto the wire. So what I'm going to do is just heat the wire, and the spillover of the flame onto the coin will get it hot enough that the solder will flow onto it. So I'm about 50 mil away, just going back and forth on my wire. The flux will go clear, which is where it is now. And then the solder should run fairly quickly. So you can see the wire is red now. And there the solder goes. So that's what I want. Stop at that point, quench and pickle. Now, I'm going to figure the length I need for a ring, but then I'm going to make it into a pendant. So we can have it either or. But we'll use the size for the ring. Mine is an O+, which is 1776, 1782, I'm corrected. So it will be the diameter plus the thickness of the metal, which is 2 mil times 3.14, and that will give you your exact length. So I've done my math, and for a ring shank for this, what I need is 62 millimeters. Well, what I'm going to do is curve this into a pendant shape, including the bail, and my total size will be 62. Yeah, so I'm going to go, you figure to make a bail I need an extra 20 millimeters, so I'm going to make it 80 millimeters long. We'll cut this, and I'll just use my side cutters. So file the end flat. Tidy it up with your sanding stick. Now, this is going to be our bail, so what I'm going to do is flatten this to half the thickness using my planishing hammer for that 20 millimeters. It's a slightly rounded end, shift so you can see. Now, I didn't hammer it enough that it'll be fully work hardened, so I'm just going to take my flat round pliers, grab that at the end, twist that until it touches. Now that's my bail, yeah, and I'll use my flat half round pliers. So it's pretty average, but it is a usable pendant at that length. Now my idea was to turn the bail and to form this around a ring mandrel. So smaller than the size for your ring. And I'll just go ahead and pull my bail up beside the coin. And then I'll use my rawhide hammer to round it out. And you should know your size. You should be able to see it on your ring stick. Mine is, if I can get my glasses to work, down here. Yeah. So down there. And when I hammer the bail, so there's my ring or pendant, and you'll just want to position the coin, if you use a coin, you want to position it so the head is the way you'd like to have it. Yeah. Now with this is just the idea. This another one of Soham's good ideas, or not. You can curve this. You can dome it, or you can just leave it flat like this one. Now, normally when I make the bail, I hallmark it on the outside. But if you're going to turn it into a ring, what I would probably do is hallmark it on the inside like you would a ring. It just depends on what you make it into. So that's it for today. Simple little idea. Take it and run with it. Ciao.